Hi, my name is Bridget Smith, and today I'll be presenting to you on the root cipher. So what is the root cipher? According to Mr. Dan Rodriguez Clark, who writes for Crypto Corner, a root cipher is a transposition cipher where plain text is written in a grid and encoded by a chosen root. So you may be wondering what a transposition cipher is. To be more specific, this is defined as a rearrangement of letters that will make the ciphertext appear to be well encrypted, according to the Computer Science Department at the University of Rhode Island. Okay, so a little brief history before we get into it. The root cipher was originally used during the Civil War, and they were used by the Union forces. Originally, whole words of a sentence were moved around as opposed to individual letters, which is what we know now. But the enemy started picking up important information, and so the Union forces needed to change this, and that's when they started encoding their words using individual letters like I mentioned before, and that's how we got our root cipher that we know today. So how do you encrypt with a root cipher? So you and your partner are first going to pick a number of columns to make the grid. Then you're going to insert the text from left to right into the grid, and if you have any extra spaces in your grid, you're going to add filler letters, which is just any letter you feel like using. And then once you have done this, you are going to choose the root on which to encrypt your message, and then people generally put it into 5-letter groupings so you can't see the length of the words. So here's an example. You want to send a message to your partner that says, "Abort the mission, you have been spotted." You have agreed on 5 columns with your partner, as you can see here. You have 5 columns across, and you agree that the root is going to be down the columns. So, like I mentioned before, you're going to put the message in the grid from left to right, and then since you have 2 extra spaces, in this case we have chosen X to be our filler letter. And then to make the message, we just peel off the letters in 5-letter groupings from down the column. And this is what your message ends up to be like. To decrypt this, you're going to have to know the root and the width of the grid in which the message was originally put in. And this can be hard to decrypt if you don't know the key that you and your partner decided on, which is one of the strengths of this type of coding. So if we were doing the same thing, we would just take our 5-letter groupings, and since we agreed on a down the column root as before, we would just put the letters in down the column, and then we would have our message. Okay, so as I mentioned before, one of the security benefits of this is that it can be hard to decrypt without a key, which makes it useful. But some benefits that don't work are words can be left unscrambled depending on the root, and if your enemy is good enough, depending on the length of the message, they can unscramble the root and guess the width of the grid and end up finding out your message, especially because there's no letter changes, so letters aren't turned into numbers to mean something else. There's no added security, but it can be strengthened to be better if people work on it for a long time. And here are my references, and that's the end of my talk.